Today on Sports Central, we go over our next team projection of this offseason, and it's over the Washington Huskies, a team that went 3-1 in the 2020 season. This team only played 4 games in 2020, which is only a fraction of a normal season, obviously, but this team certainly had some promising games last season. But how will they be in 2021 is what we're going over here today. We're going to go over a few players that Washington will be losing, who they'll be returning, and also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with their previous 6 games for Washington, which obviously they didn't have 6 games. So this is basically their schedule of last season. They beat Oregon State 27-21, beat Arizona 44-27, also beat Utah, good win there, 24-21. They lost their final game of the season against Stanford 26-31, and then of course this team fell with the COVID, and there's an outbreak on this team, and that pretty much abruptly ended Washington's season last year. I mean, it could have been a much better season for the Huskies, but COVID kind of ruined it for this team. But first 2 games 2-0, last 2 games they were 1-1. So overall, once again, there's not much to look at here considering this team only played 4 games. But this team did play pretty well last season. I definitely think Washington could have played pretty well in a bowl game. I mean, this team was supposed to originally be in the Pac-12 championship until, once again, the COVID outbreak hit, and this team was subbed out for Oregon, which definitely sucks, and I feel bad for Washington fans and the players in general, because it could have been a much better season. But that being said, moving on to 2021, looking at your roster preview, of course, your return, your starting quarterback, Dylan Morris, he's coming back. Last season, Dylan Morris put up, it looks like, just right around 900 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a 61% completion rate, which through 4 games, those are some pretty good stats. Sean McGrew is also coming back, your top running back there. He had just right around 240 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then Kamari Pleasant's also coming back. He put up just over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. As for Cade Otton, he's coming back. He was your top tight end, and he was also your top receiver last season in receiving yards. He put up just over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. Puka Nakua is transferring to BYU. He will not be with the team next season. He was your top wide receiver last year. He put up just over 150 yards, so really this team did not have a very impactful wide receiver. But the problem is this team is losing their top 2 wide receivers. Ty Jones is transferring away as well. So, I mean, you got, of course, you got Cade Otton coming back, which he's basically your top receiver right now. But as far as the wide receiver position, this team is having their top 2 transfer away, which could be kind of concerning there. But yeah, Terrell Bynum is coming back, so it's going to be a big return there. He put up some pretty good stats himself, actually. He put up just over 200 yards on the 2020 season. So overall, the receiving core is probably the biggest question mark, I'd say, for Washington here. I mean, otherwise, returning production looks pretty good. Offensive line returns everyone. You lose 2 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, 2 in the secondary. So you do lose a moderate amount on the defensive side. But, I mean, otherwise, once again, the only question mark I'd say for Washington next year is in the receiving core, whether or not this team I mean, they got a good tight end, but it's just a matter of whether or not the receiving core is going to be able to put up the numbers that they need to have a good season. But how high could Washington get in 2021 is a big question here. I mean, this team, Washington is always relevant. It's just a matter of whether or not this team can actually win the title, which, of course, they've been pretty overshadowed by Oregon in the past few years, which Oregon is definitely got a couple of question marks as well. So for Washington here, I mean, this team's got a good opportunity to possibly win the Pac-12 North and get to that Pac-12 championship game, because that's definitely going to be a huge priority for this team, and I'm assuming a huge goal for the Huskies next year. I mean, it's just bound to happen for Washington. Like, this team definitely is going to be going for it. But chance of a bowl season in 2021, though, I mean, looking at your returning production, once again, returning production looks good for Washington. It's only a matter of just the talent depth, and a big part of that is in the receiving core in general. I mean, if you look once again at this receiving core, you're losing your top 2 wide receivers. They're both transferring away. So that's, once again, the biggest question mark of this team. But chance of a bowl season is very good for Washington. I'd say this team is much more likely than not to make it to a bowl game next season. I'd be actually pretty surprised if this team missed one. I mean, once again, with Dylan Morris coming back, I mean, especially having your quarterback coming back, this team should be just fine going into next season and making it to a bowl-wise. It's, once again, only a matter of how far they can get past that, whether or not this team can go to a Pac-12 championship or not. But looking at your schedule, you start off the season against Montana on September 4th. You got Michigan then on the road. So that's going to be an interesting matchup in Ann Arbor. You got to play Michigan, which is a team that I think should be back to being a good team next season. So that could be a tougher matchup there. You got Arkansas State coming to town the next week. Then you start off your Pac-12 schedule with California. You got Oregon State on the road, UCLA, Arizona, Stanford, both on the road. Then you got Oregon at home. You got Arizona State also at home. So both of those games are going to be crucial, especially that Oregon game. I mean, whoever wins the Oregon-Washington game is more than likely going to be in the Pac-12 championship. So you've got a major game there on November 6th. Then you got Colorado then on the road, and then Washington State to finish out the season. So once again, the Arizona State game could be a tough one, but Oregon especially, mark that one on the calendars. That is going to be a big game there in determining how both seasons go for both Oregon and Washington. Like, once again, it's more than likely the winner of that Washington-Oregon game will be in the Pac-12 championship. But looking at your first 6 games, that's how Montana's a win. So you should start off the season 1-0. But that Michigan game is pretty much a 50-50 game. I mean, that is a tough one to predict. I'd probably just favor Michigan right now just because, I mean, they're in the Big Ten. They're in a tougher conference. But, I mean, Washington, once again, they're going to keep it very close. I do see that game being close. That's a tough one to predict for sure. I mean, it could easily go either way. Arkansas State, that's going to be a win. California, Oregon State, and UCLA will all be close games. I'd probably favor Washington against California and UCLA. Oregon State on the road. I mean, Oregon State's not very good, but with it being a road game, you never know. But looking at your second half, of course, you got Arizona. I probably favor Washington big in that one, but once again, with it being a road game, I'm not going to put it as a guaranteed win quite yet. Stanford's going to be somewhat a close one. Once again, that Oregon game is going to be definitely the biggest game of the season. I mean, once again, winner of that one's probably going to be in the Pac-12 championship. Basically a 50-50 game right now. Good thing is for Washington is that they do have that game at home. Arizona State's going to be a close one as well. Also a 50-50 matchup. I'd definitely say your toughest month of action is definitely in November. Even though you're traveling a ton in your October, I mean, the road games in October aren't really that terribly difficult. It's just in November you've got good team after good team. I mean, Colorado's even going to be a pretty good team next season again. So with having them on the road, that's a game to watch out for. Washington State, though, will be a win. I do not expect them to be good at all next year. So you got 3 guaranteed wins next season, but the ceiling is very high for this team. I'm putting it up to 10-2 for Washington. Once again, I think this team is definitely capable of being a Pac-12 contender next season. Projection will be 8-4, so I'm going kind of conservative with the projection there. I mean, 8-4. If you guys get to 8-4 next season, that would be a great season, I would say, for Washington. 6-6 will be our floor. So I've got you going to a bowl game no matter what happens next season, which is good news there. Once again, it's just a matter of whether or not this team can make it to the Pac-12 title game or not, or even win the Pac-12. That being said, that wraps up my projections on Washington. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the Huskies. I appreciate you guys all watching those. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you later.